Okay, we are live.
All right, I'll call the Planning Committee meeting to order. Welcome everybody to a virtual meeting of Planning Committee of Barrie City Council. Of course, due to the pandemic, this meeting is being conducted remotely. Our members of council are visible on the screen and will be keeping their cameras on and participating via video conference. Our members of the executive management team, our city clerk and staff are available to answer questions, but they are not available, or at least visible at the moment. We will go through the agenda as we normally do. We'll first go through the consent agenda. I'll read out the title associated with the recommended motions and staff reports for tonight's agenda. Members Planning Committee can ask that the item be held for further discussion. If the item is not held, the motion on the agenda is deemed to be approved on consent and will go forward to City Council for our consideration at the next meeting, which is Monday, June the 29th. So we will do the consent agenda and then proceed to the public meetings. And we do have 3 public meetings at this Planning Committee meeting tonight. All right, so first, the consent agenda. We have no items of deferred business at Planning Committee tonight. We have several staff reports. The first one is with regards to an application for a zoning bylaw amendment, 2591451 Ontario Inc. This is for 829 Essa Road.
Hold, please.
Held by Councillor Harvey. The next staff report is an application for zoning bylaw amendment for 1701390 Ontario Limited and 1701391 Ontario Limited. This is for 658 and 662 Mapleview Drive East. No holds on that item. It is approved. We have an application for a zoning bylaw amendment. This one is 2667340 Ontario Inc., care of the Tiffin Group Limited. And this is 272 Innisfil Street. No holds on that item. It is approved. Last, we have an application for zoning bylaw amendment at 481 Young by 481 Young Developments.
Hold, please.
That's held by Councillor Jim Harris. Sorry, we have one more staff report. It's not a planning approval, but rather a CIP matter. This is Community Improvement Plan funding. This is for the Lack House development. It's at 185 Dunlop Street East. No holds on that. It is approved. Okay, so those 2 matters that were held, 829 Essa and 481 Young, we will deal with after the public meetings. Okay, so for the public meetings, the way this works remotely, registering prior to the meeting was encouraged if you wanted to speak tonight. But if you have not registered and you do wish to speak tonight and you're watching, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353. That's 797-5353. Staff will send you the information required so that you can participate tonight. We have 3 public meetings as mentioned. The first one is to review an application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of South of 49 Inc. This is for lands known municipally as 97 Miller Drive and 275 Pringle. Second public meeting will be to review an application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions as well on behalf of Mark Porter for lands known municipally as 2 Arbor Trail. The third public meeting is to review an application for zoning bylaw amendment and a draft plan of subdivision. That's submitted by Celeste Phillips Planning Inc. on behalf of 428 Little Inc. for lands known municipally as 428 Little Avenue and 237 Foster Drive. So members of Planning Committee will be listening to the presentations and the comments from the public meetings. We will not be making comments or debating the item tonight. Members of Planning Committee will have an opportunity to provide comments regarding the applications at the time the staff reports are considered by Planning Committee, and that will be at a later date. Anyone who is wishing further notification of the staff reports for these 3 proposals should email the Legislative Services Branch, that is at cityclerks@barrie.ca. Ms. Banfield, the Director of Development Services, could you confirm that notification was conducted in accordance with the Planning Act for the public meetings?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it was.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will call on our first presenter now, and that's Kathryn Sellers from Innovative Planning Solutions to present the presentation concerning the application for zoning bylaw amendment for 97 Miller Drive and 275 Pringle. Mr. Sellers.
Is screen sharing up?
It is indeed, sir. The floor is yours.
All right, good evening, Your Worship, members of the council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Kathryn Sellers, planner with Innovative Planning Solutions, here on behalf of the applicant tonight for zoning bylaw amendment on lands known as 97 Miller Drive and 275 Pringle Drive. The subject lands are located in red on this image. The first of the two properties is located at 97 Miller Drive. This property possesses approximately 24 meters of frontage on Miller Drive and 67 meters of frontage on Sproul. This lot is approximately 1,653 square meters and currently possesses one detached residential dwelling along the Miller Drive frontage. The second property is located at 275 Pringle Drive. The property is irregular in shape and possesses approximately 41 meters of frontage on Pringle and approximately 10.5 meters of frontage on Sproul. This lot is approximately 827 square meters in size, and it is vacant of any structures. As shown here on the left image, the collective lands are designated as residential in the city's official plan, Schedule A. As you can see, the surrounding lands in every direction are also designated residential by the official plan. The subject lands are outlined in red on the image on the right, highlighting the residential 1 zone and residential 3 zoning currently in place on these lands. As illustrated in this image, the majority of properties lining Pringle Drive in this area are zoned R3, while the majority of properties lining the east side of Miller Drive are primarily zoned R2. To provide some neighborhood context, these images depict the type of built form found in the surrounding area. As you can see, the neighborhood is comprised of low-density detached dwellings in a combination of bungalow and 2-story built forms. The development proposal includes a total of 3 low-density single detached residential lots. Each of the 3 lots will front onto Pringle Drive and provide for suitable and appropriate building envelopes, matching the surrounding built form. Each lot will possess a minimum of 13 meters of frontage, or 42 feet, with a double wide driveway for each dwelling. In order to facilitate this development, a zoning bylaw amendment is required. The proposed amendment will rezone the eastern portion or backyard of the 97 Miller Drive property to the R3 zone from the R1 zone as shown here in the hatched area. The resulting line dividing the R3 zoning along Pringle Drive and the R1 and R2 zoning along Miller Drive would be uniform and consistent as a result of this development. The area subject to the rezoning represents a total of approximately 537 square meters. Subsequent to the rezoning being sought, a boundary adjustment will be required. As shown here, the dividing line between the 275 and 97 Miller Drive property will be adjusted. The boundary adjustment will result in 275 Pringle receiving the R3 rezoned portion of 97 Miller, resulting in an efficient vacant development parcel. Simultaneous to the boundary adjustment, the 2 severance applications will request the creation of 3 residential lots as shown here. When analyzing the zoning requirements of the R3 zone as shown in this matrix, no special provisions are required for this development and all zoning requirements will be met without exception. The city's population is expected to rise to 210,000 residents by the year 2031. In order to achieve this target, growth has to happen in both an efficient and sustainable manner. Intensification and infilling directives are supported by all levels of planning policy. The city is mandated to achieve 40% of new residential growth within the built-up area, as is proposed by this development. On a small scale, this development does assist the city in achieving its intensification and growth requirements. In conclusion, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is being sought to permit the creation of 3 low-density dwellings and lots on lands that are designated for residential use within the city. This development allows for efficient configuration and use of the subject lands while providing a built form that will seamlessly integrate into the surrounding community. This concludes my presentation, and I thank you for the opportunity to share the details.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sellers. I'll call on Michelle Banfield now, our Director of Development, to give us an update on the status of this application.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee. In addition to the presentation by Mr. Sellers, a memorandum was provided to committee to describe the application. It's currently in circulation with city staff and our partner agencies for comment. A neighborhood meeting was held on January 23rd, 2020, and the meeting was attended by 2 residents and the ward councillor. The residents discussed the importance of ensuring compatibility with the proposed development within the existing residential neighborhood. The primary land use and planning matters being considered at this time include the overall compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood as it relates to the proposed lot sizes, the building setbacks, build form, and site servicing. And as Mr. Sellers pointed out, Committee of Adjustment applications would be anticipated to create the new lots once council's made a decision on the zoning bylaw. All comments and questions received from the public during the technical review process, including all the calls, letters, emails, and what we hear tonight, will be included and addressed and answered in the planning staff report. We are anticipating to bring a planning staff report back to committee with a recommendation in the fall of 2020. The submission materials and all the key dates associated with this application is available for viewing online on the city's proposed development webpage under Ward 5, and the file manager, Tyler Butler, could also be contacted for more information. This concludes my presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Banfield. Do we have anybody who has, I don't think we had anybody register in advance for this particular public meeting. Have we had anyone call in, Ms. Cook? No, not at this point. Okay, so if we have no members of the public who wish to speak at this meeting, I will ask if there are any brief questions of clarification from members of Planning Committee. I'll start with the ward councillor. Councillor Thompson, any questions? Okay, seeing none. Any questions, members of Planning Committee? Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. To Mr. Zellers. Did I hear Ms. Banfield, and I think you touched on it earlier, you're going for rezoning and then you need to go to Committee of Adjustment again to subdivide the lots?
Through your worship, Councilor Morales, yes, that's correct.
Why?
I don't know if my screen is still shared here. Is it?
No.
Okay. Essentially, the rear, we had discussions before applications were submitted. The rear portion, we did discussions with the city regarding proceeding with the committee applications in order to create these 3 lots, and the feedback that we got was that the rear yard of 97 Miller being zoned R1 would have to be rezoned prior to proceeding to committee to sever the lots.
Wow. Councillor Thompson, it's always Ward 5 that brings us these applications. They should be at Committee of Adjustment. One more question. Is there a reason why you're not considering zoning the existing structure? So, because you're going to get zoning on the future structures, but you're going to leave R1 on the existing structure. Is there a reason you're not just, sure, you intend to leave the zoning? I'm just thinking of future proofing. I always like long-term growth, and having an existing structure applied to R3 zoning would allow it to maybe get a granny suite or a laneway house for affordable housing in the future, or in a future where the numbers make sense, maybe it comes down and becomes another structure? Is there a specific reason why that's not your intent? Again, we are by no way influence your decision, but I'm just curious to see if there was a thought process to it, especially as we move to denser, more affordable housing.
Through your worship to Councilor Morales. Good question. Yeah, so the existing lot, or the retained lot at 97 Miller will meet all the provisions of the R1 zone. The Miller Drive on the west side is R1, and then the east side of Miller is a mixture of R2 and a little bit of R3. If we were to rezone the retained lot to an R2, it wouldn't have resulted in two new lots there in the future per se. So that's just not something that we pursued.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mayor Lehman.
Thanks, Councilor Morales. Any other questions of clarification from members of Planning Committee? Okay, seeing none, I will thank you for your presentation, Mr. Sellers, and the update, Ms. Banfield, and we'll declare this public meeting concluded. Again, a reminder to anybody watching who's interested in this file, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca if you wish notification of when this staff report will be coming to Planning Committee for decision. Okay, I will now proceed with the second public meeting tonight. And I believe that's Mr. Sellers again. That was well done, whoever arranged that one. This is concerning an application for zoning bylaw amendment for 2 Arbor Trail. Mr. Sellers. Oh, sorry, just a second. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I have to declare plenty interest as I live adjacent to that property at 9 Arbor Trail.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Has Councillor McCann's conflict of interest been recorded?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it has.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sellers, floor is yours.
Sorry, I just had to figure out how to unmute there. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cameron Sellers. Again, I'm a planner here with Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of the applicant regarding a zoning bylaw amendment application for lands located at 2 Arbor Trail. The subject lands are highlighted in red in this image with an approximate size of 0.2 hectares or 2,000 square meters. The lands possess two road frontages, including 30.5 meters onto Arbor Trail and 66.3 meters onto Cox Mill Road. Arbor Trail is a private roadway, while Cox Mill is a municipal road. Currently, 1 single detached residential dwelling is positioned on the lands, oriented towards Lake Simcoe with access from Arbor Trail as shown here. The topography of the site slopes gradually towards Cox Mill Drive as well as towards the waterfront. This slide illustrates the land use designation and zoning that currently applies to the subject lands. As shown on the left, the lands are designated as residential in the city's official plan. Aside from the open space area associated with the private marina to the west, the balance of surrounding lands are also designated residential in this area. As shown on the right, the lands are currently zoned residential 1 in the city zoning bylaw. As you can see here, this stretch of Cox Mill Road possesses many residential lots which have been recently created under the R2 zone. This slide displays the subject lands noted by the star, illustrating the land's position relative to surrounding land uses. Surrounding uses include low density residential, environmental protection, open space, as well as Lake Simcoe to the north. As illustrated here, Cox Mill Road, both south and west of the subject lands, has been undergoing redevelopment in recent years. Upwards of 10 new lots have been created or reconfigured along Cox Mill Road in very close proximity to the subject site, with some of the architectural styling displayed here. This redevelopment is proceeded by way of rezoning to the R2 zone with similar lot frontages and sizes as compared to what is proposed by this application. The development proposal includes one new low-density residential lot and dwelling. The severed lot will possess 17.6 meters or 57 feet of frontage on a Cox Mill with a lot area of approximately 530 square meters. The retained lot will possess 48.7 meters of frontage on a Cox Mill with an area of approximately 1,470 square meters. The existing dwelling on the subject lands would continue to exist on the retained lot with its access point reconfigured such that it enters from Cox Mill Road rather than from Arbor Trail. And municipal services are present and available to service both dwellings. These architectural renderings have been prepared to provide a visual representation of the proposed development as seen from various angles. The renderings show the scale and architectural styling of a dwelling that could be situated on the severed lot. As seen here, a high level of architectural features have been provided to the facades, both facing Cox Mill as well as side facing towards Arbor Trail. In order to facilitate this development, a zoning bylaw amendment is required. The amendment seeks to rezone the south portion of the lands as R2 in order to permit future severance of the proposed lot. The R2 zone is sought as consistent with the zoning granted for the recent redevelopment projects on the east and west sides of Cox Mill Road in this area. We've completed a zoning analysis for each of the proposed severed and retained lots as depicted here. The matrix on the left illustrates that the retained lot will fully conform with the R1 zone without exception, while the matrix on the right illustrates that the severed lot will fully conform to the R2 zone without exception as well. No special provisions are required for this development. In support of the development, various studies were completed, including plan and justification report, urban design review, functional servicing brief, natural heritage evaluation, as well as a tree inventory and preservation plan. In conclusion, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is being sought to permit the creation of one new low-density lot and dwelling on lands designated as residential within the city. The development represents efficient use of the subject lands, providing for an appropriately sized residential lot and built form to integrate with the surrounding evolving area. This development represents small-scale, low-density growth within Barrie's built-up area and is supported by all levels of planning policy. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sellers. I will ask Michelle Banfield, Director of Development Services, again, to give us a brief update on the status of this one. Ms. Banfield.
Thanks very much, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee. Further to Mr. Sellers' presentation, please be advised that planning staff are currently reviewing the technical aspects of this application. A neighborhood meeting was held in January of this year regarding the application, where 2 members of the public and the local ward councillor were in attendance. Those in attendance didn't raise any concerns with the application, but just rather expressed general interest in the proposal. The application is currently undergoing its technical review by planning staff, as well as the city's technical review team and the Conservation Authority. An analysis of this application will be brought back at a later date through a staff report with a recommendation for Planning Committee's consideration. The primary planning and land use matters being considered at this time include the site servicing and grading, ensuring that there are no impacts on the natural features, in particular the Lake Simcoe shoreline, protection and preservation of existing vegetation, particularly boundary and boulevard trees, looking at the compatibility of the surrounding neighborhood as it relates to the proposed lot size, building setbacks, and built form. Planning staff are targeting the 4th quarter of 2020 to bring a staff report back. And then, as Mr. Sellers said, if approved, a subsequent application for consent to create the new lot would be required. All comments and questions received from the public during the technical review process, including the calls and letters and emails and what we hear tonight, will be addressed and included and addressed in the planning staff report when we bring it back to you. All submission materials and key dates associated with this application are available online for viewing on the city's proposed development webpage under Ward 8, and the file manager, Andrew Gamero, can be contacted for more information. So this concludes my presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Thanks very much, Ms. Banfield. Do we have anyone registered or who's called in? We don't have anyone registered. Has anyone called in for this public meeting?
No, Mayor Lehman, we have received no phone calls.
Okay. I will call right now. Last call. Is there anyone out there watching? If you do wish to speak at this meeting, please email right away or call 797-5353. In the meantime, I will ask if there are any questions of clarification from members of Planning Committee regarding this application. Councillor Morales.
Ms. Banfield, why does, same question, why does one plot of land with one structure being severed into two, when not on spec, but when it's clearly a site plan is coming that it will be a single detached home structure coming forward, why does it need to go through a full zoning and council? It might be my misunderstanding, and hopefully I'll never have to ask the question again, but I've seen properties at committee of adjustment where it's the same one lot being divided and a second one is being created, and then it just goes through committee of adjustment.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Morales, what the parent land use has to be addressed in some capacity. And in this instance, to create the lot size that the applicant is asking for, they would either need to do a consent with a minor variant listing a whole bunch of variances, such as lot frontage, lot area, potentially coverage. So there's that aspect of what would have to be addressed. So staff's position in particular in this area has always been that dealing with the land use in a broader context and with council's approval for the zoning is an appropriate way to address that smaller lot size. And then ultimately when they go for their consent, it is a consent without any associated minor variances.
Okay, but there are instances that exist elsewhere where less variances are required, therefore staff recommend committee of adjustment rezoning. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, and if council had concerns about examples like this, small little examples, the reason I bring it up is this adds to the cost. This is the red tape people talk about. This is tens of thousands of dollars to end users, people trying to afford homes, whether it be an $800,000 home in this area or it be a $400,000 home. It all affects the market. We're just adding costs. So if council, I have to phrase it as a question, if council had the desire to reduce this, thanks for the smile, if council had a desire to reduce unnecessary, if we felt that was the case, which I can't speak on behalf of council, unnecessary red tape costs, what kind of policy change or directive from council would you need as a director of planning to have a little bit more of a leeway with applications that still are the same density as it's existing in surrounding neighborhood, but might benefit from getting a couple of variances and would go through committee of adjustment much faster and reduce adding tens of thousands of dollars onto a final sales price? Is there a policy directive that you would need, or that's not something council can direct?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Morales. In this case, the property is zoned R1. So council's ultimate position on the property through the approval of the zoning bylaw, recognizing it's not this council, was that R1 and those lot sizes in this area were appropriate. So that's ultimately, you'd need to have a fundamental change to the zoning bylaw to change the overall zoning of this particular area, if you wanted to do something broad and as opposed to having this these site-specific applications come forward.
And my final question is the new official plan that's coming in the future, does it capture concerns that I've been expressing about, listen, if somebody has one property and is trying to put a 3-story building, yes, go through rezoning, I get that, but it's these little kind of pocket infill, very conforming, they're filling in single detached homes near single detached homes, that I'm kind of wondering that maybe the new official plan is going to capture that and make it still have the accountability to it, but make it a little bit more channel it through a proper framework such as committee of adjustment, or is that not being addressed in the upcoming OP?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Morales. So the OP would be a higher level look at it. It would have policies, let's say it was residential, it would have consent policies in there. It really would be the zoning bylaw that's going to follow the OP that would say, in this R1 zone, for example, the lot size is going to be smaller or what have you. So the OP is going to have some definitely overarching policies about severances and compatibility and so on and so forth. But it's ultimately the zoning that would kind of look at different standards for individual lots.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your patience, Ms. Banfield.
Classic Zoom fail. In the interim, have we had anyone ask to speak? Ms. Cook?
No, Mayor Lehman, we have received no speakers.
Okay, thanks. And thanks, Councilor Morales, for the questions around these smaller applications. This is certainly a minor matter in terms of a public meeting, but a rezoning nonetheless. With that, I will declare the public meeting concluded and thank Mr. Sellers for both presentations tonight and Ms. Banfield for the clarifications. Our third public meeting probably has a little bit more participation anticipated, at least. It is with regards to a zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision for 428 Little Avenue and 237 Foster Drive. I will now call on Celeste Phillips from Celeste Phillips Planning, Inc. to make the presentation with regards to this application. Ms. Phillips, welcome to our virtual planning committee meeting, and the floor is yours. Oh, but you're still muted.
How's that? Mayor Lehman?
We can hear you, Ms. Phillips. We
Thank
can't
you.
see the screen yet, though, if you could screen share.
I'm going to do that right now.
Awesome, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Lehman, members of council, members of city staff, and the public. Hopefully you can see the screen now. Thank you.
All good.
Okay, I am Celeste Phillips. I'm a land use planning consultant. I'm here this evening on behalf of the owners of this property. And as you mentioned at the outset, Mayor Lehman, this property has two addresses, 237 Foster Drive and 428 Little Avenue. With me this evening at this virtual meeting is a representative from the ownership group, Mr. Aaron Gold. He's the Vice President of Operations at PlazaCom, and the project architect, Limor Benmore Mizrahi from Peter Higgins Architects. And the request this evening is for your consideration of a rezoning and a plan of subdivision to permit 56 townhouses. These would be condominium townhouses, including 6 affordable units. Because these are condominium townhouses, there is a planning requirement to also approve a very simple plan of subdivision application, which I will describe for you as I go forward. This property consists of 5 acres. It is located north of Little Avenue. It's east of McLaren Avenue, and it's south of Foster Drive. It is bounded on the east side by the Metrolinx rail line, the GO line. And in this location, the elevation of the GO line is actually lower than the property we're speaking about this evening. The owners have entered into an agreement with the City of Barrie to purchase the Foster Drive unopened road allowance, which is located in this area right here. I think you can see that. And this property is located within the City of Barrie's built boundary. So in terms of the land use context, there are 7 single detached dwellings located here on the east side of McLaren Avenue. Those lots have a width of about 18 meters and a depth of about 46 meters. So those 7 lots are roughly 60 feet wide by 150 feet deep. Also on the east side of McLaren is Highland Park, which consists of 1.8 acres. And then to the south, there are single detached dwellings located on the north side of Little Avenue. The most easterly lot and house actually abuts the property that we're speaking about this evening. To the south of Little Avenue are vacant lands which are zoned residential hold. To the east, as I mentioned, is the railway, and beyond that, Hurst Drive, and to the east of that, Tollendale Village, which is developed with retirement and seniors nursing care facilities. To the north, as I mentioned, is the unopened Foster Drive road allowance. This is an extract of the City of Barrie's official plan schedule. The yellow on this indicates that the property, which is outlined in red, is designated as residential. So there is no requirement for an official plan amendment to allow the development as proposed. However, there is a request for rezoning to residential RM2. And the RM2 zone is a zone that the city requires site plan control, which means if council agrees to rezone this property, then the architectural plans would need to be reviewed by city staff and approved. And then there would be an agreement with the City of Barrie, and that agreement is registered on title so that the development plans are built as contemplated. The next slide is the zoning. This property is a little bit unusual. It has 4 different zoning categories: R1, R2, R3, and R4. You can see that there are residential hold lands to the south. As I mentioned, there's vacant lands. The Tollendale Village is zoned RM2, and the green areas represent the open space in the area. The next slide is the proposed site plan as prepared by the project architect. And just to get your bearings, along the bottom of the slide is Little Avenue. Along the right-hand side is the rail line, and across the top is the Foster Drive road allowance. So what is being proposed is a private condominium roadway that would have all-turn movement access from Foster Drive, and it would extend through the center of the property down to Little Avenue. At Little Avenue, the intersection with the condominium roadway, the city engineering staff have indicated that they would like only a right in, right out turn movement at that location. So the setback from the Metrolinx line, the requirement is 30 meters. In addition to that, Metrolinx requires a retaining wall and a chain link fence. The 56 townhouses would be located on the condominium roadway. They would have privacy fencing. That is a city requirement to have privacy fencing where you have townhouse use next to single detached dwellings. And so in this case, my expectation is that the city would request a 2-meter high closed board fence. The density in the RM2 zone for a typical townhouse development is 53 units per hectare. This development is about half of that, which is about 27.4 units per hectare. But with the impending land purchase of the Foster Drive road allowance, the density is lower still at 26.2 units per hectare. So it's actually half as much as you would see in a typical townhouse development. In addition to the townhouses, there's certainly parking areas that I'll speak to in a moment. There's also a stormwater management pond located at the south part of the property next to Little Avenue. And as council is aware, surface drainage needs to be managed on site and cannot drain onto adjacent properties. I mentioned earlier that there is a requirement for a plan of subdivision approval. So there has been a very simple plan of subdivision application that has been filed. It consists of 3 blocks. The first is the Foster Drive road allowance block. The second block is the development itself. And then the third block is the 2-meter road widening that the City of Barrie is requesting. The 6 affordable townhouse units are proposed to be located in this location at the southern part of the property. The next slide shows the elevations of the property as prepared by the architect. So as I mentioned, it is a single loaded condominium roadway that accesses this property as proposed. On the interior side, which is on the condominium roadway side, the elevation proposed is a 3-story townhouse, which is on the top of this slide. However, in the bottom of this slide, you will see that the elevation of these townhouses from the rear, which is from the McLaren roadside, is actually only a 2-story townhouse. And that's because there's a difference in grade across the property. This is the landscape plan as submitted to the City of Barrie. Again, as indicated, access would be from Foster Drive, extending all the way to to Little Avenue in the south. This is the stormwater management pond that is proposed. The development actually is well below the maximum lot coverage that the RM2 zone permits. It is also below the maximum height permission of the RM2 zone. The parking requirement in the City of Barrie for this type of development is 1.5 parking spaces per unit. This plan proposes far more than that. So 84 parking spaces would be what is required in the RM2 zone. This development is proposing 135 parking spaces, including 30 visitor spaces. So rather than meeting the city's requirement of 1.5 parking spaces per unit, this development is showing 2.4 parking spaces per unit, and that is to avoid spillover of parking into the residential neighborhood. As I mentioned, the setback is 30 meters from the rail line. On the west side of the property, this sort of the southwest side, this is considered to be a side yard, and typically the setback would be 1.8 meters. But in this instance, the applicant is proposing that rather than having the 1.8 meters, there would be a 7-meter setback from the rear property line of the existing residences along McLaren Avenue. The development is required to provide 35% landscaped open space. This development proposes just over 51% landscaped open space. So again, it exceeds the bylaw requirement. And I should have mentioned earlier, but we are showing here as well, pedestrian connection from the development to Highland Park. Also at the north part, this area here at Foster Drive, there would be an entry feature, and this landscape plan shows an enlargement of that entry feature from Foster Drive. As part of a complete application, there has been a number of reports submitted, and these are available for review on the City of Barrie's website. I believe they're under a Ward 8 tab. So in addition to the architectural drawings, there's a number of technical reports related to the proposed development, and those are all available for review. Prior to council making its decision with respect to this rezoning application and the plan of subdivision, the council needs to give consideration to the City of Barrie official plan. And as you know, as mentioned earlier, the forecasted population for the City of Barrie is 210,000 by 2031. And so the policies of the official plan encourage residential intensification within the built boundary. And those policies also speak to a variety of housing types, including affordable housing. The City of Barrie official plan also encourages development of vacant land that is close to transit and commercial facilities such as this property. I have also extracted a section of Schedule I to the City of Barrie official plan on the right-hand side of this slide. And I would just mention that the property is outlined in red on this slide. The purple circle represents an intensification node at the intersection of Little Avenue and Yonge Street, where the density is anticipated to be between 50 and 120 units per hectare. And the blue line represents Yonge Street, which is an intensification corridor, where the target density is 50 units per hectare. And as mentioned earlier, this development falls well below that at 27.4 units per hectare. So the City of Barrie official plan encourages residential intensification outside these nodes and corridors, but at a lesser density as is proposed this evening. The infrastructure is in place, as I've mentioned. Transit and commercial facilities are close by, as is Highland Park. The zoning is a straight rezoning to RM2. There's no requirement for any special provisions. The accommodation of 6 units of attainable or affordable housing responds to the city's official plan in the interest in providing 10% of all new units as affordable. In addition, council will be sure to make a decision that is consistent with provincial policies. The 2 key documents are the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the provincial policy statement. And as you know, those documents encourage this type of development where you have affordable housing, you have a varied density, there's full municipal services, it's vacant land, and again, the province also encourages this type of development. As I mentioned, the zoning standards, there's no exceptions being requested to those. This development is below the maximum height permission. There is an oversupply of parking proposed. The landscaping far exceeds the minimum 35%, and the separation distance between existing homes has been increased from a standard of 1.8 meters to 7 meters. The open house was held a couple of months ago in February, and there were thoughtful and reasonable comments raised at that meeting. The road condition of Foster Drive was one item that was discussed. That road is not in good condition, and on one hand, the road actually serves as a traffic calming measure. On the other hand, there was interest in understanding when that road will be upgraded, and I understand from speaking with staff that that is scheduled in the 2025-2028 timeframe. Naturally, there were concerns about property values as residents in this area have become accustomed to living next to vacant land for decades. There were questions about tree preservation, and I can advise that the applicant is working very closely with city staff, arborists, the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and Metrolinx to preserve as many healthy and significant trees as possible. There were questions about the building height, and as I explained, it's a 2-story elevation on the west side. The interior view of the townhouses on the condominium roadway is actually a 3-story elevation. There was a question about construction noise, and city staff advised that there is a noise bylaw in effect in the city of Barrie that restricts the hours of construction activity. And finally, there was comments about the access to the property, and as mentioned, it would be restricted access on Little Avenue to right in, right out, but full turn movement at the Foster Drive entrance. So in summary, the rezoning to the RM2 zone and the plan of subdivision approval is being requested to permit 56 condominium townhouses, including 6 affordable townhouse units. It's my planning opinion that this application is consistent with provincial policies and conforms to the City of Barrie official plan. I thank you for your attention to my presentation, and I will turn it back to you, Mayor Lehman, to hear from the public.
Ms. Phillips, thank you very much for the presentation. I'll ask Ms. Banfield to give us an update on the status of this application. Ms. Banfield.
And my video. Here we go. And I'm done. No, sorry. My apologies. Good evening, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee. In addition to the presentation by Ms. Phillips, a memorandum was provided to committee to describe the application, and the technical review is underway. Ms. Phillips did a great job summarizing the details of the neighborhood meeting, and it was held in February. We have about 35 people that we have noted attended. And again, those high-level issues that Ms. Phillips noted were a bit about traffic, a bit about kind of servicing upgrades, road improvements, boundary trees, loss of privacy, and the noise concerns. So you'd already heard those from Ms. Phillips. The expected to return to council date is anticipated in the fall of 2020. All the comments and questions, everything that we hear from the public and during the technical review process, all the calls, letters, emails, what we hear tonight will be included and addressed and answered in the planning staff report. All of the submission materials and key dates associated with these applications are available for viewing online on the city's proposed development webpage under Ward 8. And the file manager is Tyler Butler, and he can also be contacted for more information. So this concludes my presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Banfield, for the update. We will now go to comments from members of the public. I know we have one on the line, and that's Juanita. I think you have been waiting and you are on the phone. Juanita, welcome to Planning Committee. And if we can just get your address, your first and last name and your address for the record of the meeting, and then we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Jeff Lehman. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you.
Yes, my name is Juanita Trevald, and I live at the property at 422 Little, adjacent to the proposed property development at 428 Little.
Okay, thanks. Tell us what you think.
Okay, so I have a lot of concerns about noise and privacy, and also about the traffic of the road that's going to be put in, being right beside our house. And I have a child with autism, and he has sensory issues to sound, and we moved here for the privacy and for the fact that we had no neighbors and no sidewalks. It is a big concern because he is highly sensitive to sound, and he can become very aggressive. So I have written you a letter to you and the counselors, and I sent it the other day. Also, when we leave our driveway, it takes 5 minutes to get out of our driveway, and there is a lot of traffic, both going towards Hearst and towards Yonge, and putting another road in there would just make a lot of congestion and traffic, and we would have a lot more trouble getting out of our driveway. As well as our son, because of we moved here for all the, like I said, the privacy and the fact that there was no neighbors behind and beside us, that we have this nice trees and stuff. And he is unable to go out in public and attend recreational activities. So his backyard is his only outlet. And right now he goes out there and he's happy, and it gives him something other than being in the house all the time. And if he is forced to stay in the house all the time and cannot go outside because of the development, the noise and all that, then he can become very destructive and subsequently aggressive.
Okay, Juanita, thank you. Is that was that all of your comments, or are you just taking a pause?
Yeah, basically, like my concerns were the noise and the privacy, and then the traffic of the road going right beside our house, and all the kids and that, because he does have a high sensory to children. The sidewalk that they were proposing to put in front of our house, that's why we had bought a house without a sidewalk, because his highest trigger is children and babies, and he could possibly react if they're walking right by the front of our house. And that was another real concern that I had.
Okay. Thanks very much for this. I don't want to cut you off. Was there, were there other comments you wanted to give to us tonight?
I think most of them are in the letter that I sent you, and I've expressed most of the comments regarding this that issue.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for coming and letting us know about your concerns. Obviously, the letter that you've sent in will be part of the consultation, and our staff will be looking at that too. So thank you for calling in and letting us know about your concerns with this tonight. Please do as well, make sure whether you email or call to be put on the list to be notified of when council is going to make a decision on this one, which will be some months from now. Okay?
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for calling in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lehman.
Okay. I do think we have a couple of other folks who have registered. Ms. Cook, who have we got next to speak tonight?
Mayor Lehman, we have Kathryn and Taylor Schubert.
Kathryn and Taylor Schubert. Kathryn, welcome. Kathryn and Taylor, welcome to Planning Committee. We can't see you, but I think we will be able to hear you. Can you hear me? Hello, Kathryn, are you there? Kathryn, sorry, we can't hear you yet. Okay, do we have contact details for Kathryn? Are we going to be able to call her and see if we can work through this technical issue?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, we'll try and be in touch with her again. We have some contact details.
Okay, Kathryn, if you're there, can you, we're going to try and reach you right now to get you online. We do have one other person who has registered to make comments, and maybe we can proceed with them while we call Kathryn and try and get her on. Tamara, can you hear me? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, there we go.
Yes,
Tamara?
I can.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yep, we can hear you now. Welcome to Planning Committee. Tamara, if you can just give us your first and last name and your address for the record of the meeting, and then we would love to hear what you have to say.
My name is Tamara Gortmaker. I live at 21 McLaren Avenue, and my property backs onto the proposed site.
Okay.
So the entire neighborhood, all around Foster and McLaren, I don't believe there is one resident that is happy about this proposal, and they all have several different reasons for this. Many concerns, as that were mentioned by Celeste, decrease in property value, decrease in privacy, increase in traffic, and essentially it's a very disappointing situation for all of us residents. We also know that it has been sort of like a green space, although it's been private property for many years. It is sort of a green space that, you know, the residents have come to enjoy. So it's disappointing to see that that will disappear. Those are the main concerns, I guess. I'm not sure. I noticed there was a change point from the previous town hall meeting in which the entrance on Little Avenue has a right in and right out only. So that now increases the amount of traffic on McLaren, which is already a narrow street with no sidewalks, where many neighborhoods, children and families walk to the park, or that's their only access to walk along. So that's more of an increased concern with that change to the entrance at Little Avenue.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments. And I'm not trying to cut you off. Was there more you wanted to say, Tamara?
I know I've sent a letter in as well.
Yeah, we've got that
outlined in there primarily. I also have another neighbor here. sitting beside me, who's also concerned about potential damage to the trees that are on his property and any compensation should things like that occur.
Okay, fair point. Thank you very much for that. And we do appreciate you coming to make those comments. Any other concerns you want to let us know about tonight? We do have your letter and appreciate you sending that too. It's on the correspondence that Planning Committee received tonight.
Well, I think that's it for tonight. As long as we still have an opportunity to voice concerns prior to the decision, I think that.
Yep, a couple of things. You can contact the city to talk to the file planner as well, just to make sure that we've got all your concerns and they're being heard. And then, of course, if you give us your contact details at cityclerks@barrie.ca or by calling in, that will make sure you are notified when this comes for a decision. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that tonight. Ms. Cook, were we able to reach Kathryn and get her back online? Oh, there she is. Kathryn,
Hello?
can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi, Kathryn.
Hi. Hey, it worked. Oh my gosh.
Hey, it works this time. All right, it's Mayor Lehman. Welcome to Planning Committee. If you could just give us your name and address for the record of the meeting, and then the floor is yours to let us know what you think. Thank you.
Hi, we're Taylor Schubert and Kathryn Feldkamp. We live at 246 Foster Avenue.
Drive.
Foster Drive. We're actually the north east corner that we were actually disregarded. We are the other property that butts onto the development. So we're the end of Foster before it becomes all the trees there. We did actually have several concerns. Now that I'm here, I'm actually.
One is, will there be a three-way stop sign going in at Foster Drive and McLaren Avenue once the development is put in place?
We don't have the answers tonight. This is just for you to let us know what your concerns are, but we can certainly get back to you about that. Thank you for that. So we've made notes of the questions and we can get back to you about that one. Yeah, do let us know what you think.
Okay, so yeah, so there is we have the shared traffic concern and of course the three-way stop there, as the intersection will be directly in front of our house. We do also have, I actually still have a concern about the parking that's actually going in. Personally, I feel that everyone here has at least 2 cars, and most people in the neighborhood actually even have 3 vehicles. And what they're proposing right now is that it's a 1-car driveway and then a garage. And that's going to be the second car spot. The thing is that not even everyone for sure will have at least 2 vehicles, but because as we're a commuter city, but not everyone is going to be able to use their garage for their car. I mean, there's plenty of people here that have boats, ATVs, motorcycles, and everything else that is part of the lifestyle of Barrie. So I am concerned that there still will be a lot of spillover parking that will end up going down the street regardless and end up parking in front of our house and other residents' houses in the area. So I do have a concern about that. We also have a concern a little bit about the green space also. We've heard that they're going to do a lot for saving decent trees that are currently there, which is fantastic. But I haven't heard anything about maybe replanting a lot of trees that will be taken out, because right now it's actually a very thick forest. They are going to cut down a huge portion of it for the development. And I'm not against the development or developing the area. It's just I feel that there should be at least some sort of plan for replacing a lot of the trees in place before everything goes through. Another concern that we have is how high density the housing is going in. I mean, it's a lower density, but it's because you can only build like 60% of the land you can't even build on because of the railway setback. So it's actually very high density housing that's going in there, and all the surrounding areas, you know, aside from actually going a block away across the tracks where they have the RM2 zoning, we're primarily all single detached homes here, very sparsely populated detached homes here. So I don't really feel that it's very fitting with the neighborhood, and I have no problem with things being developed more. But I was wondering if there'd be possibility of, instead of going to the RM2, if it could be switched to, it currently has what, R3 zoning in most of the area. It does seem more fitting to have that continued throughout that whole area, at least from here. And what else did I want to mention? What else do we want to mention?
Maintenance,
Oh.
3 bins. I don't know.
Oh, I can't remember. Unfortunately, that's all I can remember right now. But thank
That's
you.
okay. We do appreciate that. And if you want to submit further comments, please do, both to the file plan, or you can email council@barrie.ca, and that gets sent to all of us. And our clerk's office can certainly help you if you want to submit anything for us to consider between now and the decision on this. And just a reminder too, to give us your contact details if you do want to be notified when the staff report's coming forward, because that's when we will debate and make a decision on the application.
Okay.
Okay. And I appreciate you coming tonight and those thoughtful comments. Ms. Cook, do we have anyone else who wishes to speak at this public meeting?
No, we don't.
Okay. Then I will thank Tamara, Kathryn, and Taylor, and Juanita for your comments. Members of Planning Committee, any questions of clarification? And I will first go to Ward Councillor Jim Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, and thanks to the residents for their comments. So I won't belabor the points and make a lot more, because I think they did a good job of expressing their comments. But I did have one question, and I asked this, came up for me at the neighborhood meeting, and it was the movements around the complex. I think that's really the key item that I see. I'm just wondering, and maybe this is to city staff, Ward 8 has a lot of non-urbanized areas and lack of sidewalks, still on septics, those kind of things. And I do agree with Ms. Phillips. There is some naturally occurring traffic calming on Foster, for certain. So that road, which is a very sparsely used road because of the way it ends, and we mentioned the plan to have these areas urbanized, but it keeps kind of getting pushed back on the priority index, as I understand, over the years. I guess this development, maybe that's my question, how will this development impact the importance or the priority index for this area to be urbanized?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Jim Harris. You're right. The latest information we have in terms of timing is pre-planning in this area in 2023, with construction happening in 2027, 2028. Depending on the nature of the improvements and depending on the nature of the applications, sometimes some aspects of these applications or of the infrastructure works do get advanced when development comes into play. And that's something that staff and the applicant work through as the application works through the approvals process.
Thank you, Ms. Manfield. Maybe one further question. I know people understandably, it's 56 townhouses and likely a couple cars per unit, and so the movement's significantly increasing in the area. Would a traffic study be different if that road work wasn't done, the streets like Foster weren't improved? How does that impact how traffic is considered in something that's going to make this significant change to an area? I don't know if that's a fair question or if that made sense. Sorry, Ms. Manfield. If that doesn't, please let me know.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Jim Harris. Well, certainly the traffic study that was submitted will be reviewed by staff, and the conclusions and the recommendations within it, if there are road improvements or if there are driveway movements, those will all be presented as part of the final recommendation report. But I can say that certainly current conditions and future conditions are always taken into account when not only a traffic study is prepared, but certainly as our team review what's provided by the applicant.
Thank you, Ms. Banfield. That's my questions for now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Harris. Any other questions of clarification from members of Planning Committee? I just had one to Ms. Phillips, and I guess it really surrounds the appropriateness of the site for intensification. I mean, obviously, when we're outside of an intensification node, it's not on an arterial road. We have certain criteria that apply that determine whether or not a site is suitable for a more intensive form of development. Notwithstanding that this is a sort of long, narrow strip that obviously is a bit of a legacy green area, there was a choice made here to go with a medium density built form rather than a single detached built form, even though the project is on sort of local residential streets. So could you just speak to why this proposal was deemed to be an appropriate site for medium density?
Yes, Your Worship. So as I mentioned, I think earlier, there is certainly the intensification strategy that concentrates intensification projects at residential nodes and corridors. But the city's official plan does allow for intensification outside those two areas, subject to a set of criteria. So in the planning justification report that has been filed, I've gone through the tests, I guess I'll call them tests, but I've gone through the rationale as to why this property should be considered for intensification, even though it is outside the corridors and nodes. And in particular, I point out that it's a much lower density than would be typically permitted in an RM2 zone. I also looked at the infrastructure that's already in place, the fact that it's on several transit routes on Hearst and Little and Young Street. It's close to commercial shopping areas. There's no special zoning required. The scale of the development, the height are all well below what is required by the bylaw. And I think what I found important in this instance was the landscape plan, in that over half of the property would remain as green space. So although only 35% needs to be green space, over 51% is. So there was an opportunity here to create a condominium development on a private road that also had the added bonus of having 6 affordable housing units. So the plan justification report goes through those tests and provides the rationale for that.
Okay, thanks for that answer. Ms. Banfield, when are we anticipating this one to come back to Planning Committee?
Mayor Lehman, likely in the fall.
Okay, so just a reminder to those who are on tonight to listen to the presentation and participate in the public meeting, to let us know your contact details if you do want to be notified when this is coming to Planning Committee for a decision. And of course, a reminder that you can call or email the file planner, get information off our website, and otherwise give us your comments over the coming months before a decision is made in the fall. So with that, I will declare the public meeting concluded. Thank you very much to everyone who is here tonight for this third public meeting.
Thank you.
And we will proceed at this point with the 2 staff reports that were held by members of Planning Committee. The first one is the 829 Essa Road matter. It was held by Councillor Harvey. Councillor Harvey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll put the matter on the floor as printed, and I have an amendment.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
The amendment is to delete paragraph 2B, which would then bring the townhouses from a 10-unit block to an 8-unit block. To change paragraph D to read, notwithstanding table 5.4.2, a minimum interior side yard setback of 1.5 meters shall be required for the end street townhouse unit whereas a maximum of 3 meters is the standard. And to change paragraph H to notwithstanding table 5.4.2, a maximum building height of 7.5 meters is permitted for each street townhouse unit, whereas a minimum of 7 meters and a maximum of 16.5 meters is the standard. And to change section I to read, notwithstanding section 5.4.3.2 sub A, the front yard setback shall be landscaped open space with a maximum 50% of the front yard for each street townhouse unit permitted as a driveway and or parking space, whereas a fully paved surface is the standard. And to also add section L, that the development be constructed substantially in accordance with the concept plan illustrated and attached to the zoning bylaw.
Sorry about that. I think the text of that amendment was circulated to members of Planning Committee. So thanks for that, Councillor Harvey. I won't try and read it again. Would you care to proceed with your comments?
Yes, please. I'll keep brief. This was the last time it was back. It was sent back to staff in the hopes that we would see a revised application from the applicant. Unfortunately, that didn't happen as per the staff report that was included in our last circulation list. Through further discussion with both the applicant's planner and our staff, we've come up to what I would say is a very good compromise and keeps this application in the hands of us here locally, opposed to potentially placing in the hands of a provincial arbitrator at LPAT. It does bring this block back down to the standard 8 units at 2 stories, opposed to 10 units at 3 stories. I know it's not going to please every resident. However, most of the residents, when I did go back canvassing, when this became a possibility, most residents were quite happy that we were going to possibly be looking at 8 and 2 opposed to 10 and 3. I'll just leave my comments at that. These are submissions that the applicant has discussed with his client, and from what I understand, are very accepting of this compromise.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harvey. On the amendment, members of Planning Committee, any comments or questions? Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Councillor Harvey, I just want to confirm, did you state that your proposed amendment is supported by both staff and the applicant in its entirety? Or did I misinterpret that?
Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
I'm not sure if it was my video cutting out or his video, but I only caught the last couple of words.
Okay, the question was whether or not this was supported by both the applicant and by, city staff. Was that what you were saying, Councillor Morales? Okay.
Yeah, in its entirety.
Sorry, Councillor Harvey, can you hear us?
That is my understanding. Yeah, it keeps cutting in and out a little bit for some reason, but yes, that is my understanding from my discussions with both the Director of Planning and with the applicant's planner.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morales?
Okay, no, that answers that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The amendment is on the floor. Are there further comments or questions about it? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question on the amendment. Those in favor, please indicate.
And I'll ask for a recorded vote, Your Worship.
Not a planning committee. We don't do that. We do that at City Council, though. We can do that when we get to City Council.
Okay.
But I will ask everybody to indicate, and it's being recorded. So visually, there's going to be a recording anyway. Those in favor, please indicate. And Councillor Harvey, you're certainly in favor. I am as well. That is unanimous support for the amendment by those present. On the main motion as amended, any further comments, questions, or amendments? Councillor McCann. Sorry, Councillor McCann. Oh, you were voting already. Okay. No further comments or questions? I'll call the question then. Those in favor, sorry, Councillor Morales, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, just one very quick one. I just want to commend Councillor Harvey on working on this file. I know that he's had lots of concerned residents. It's always a tough balance between, assuring in policy mandated growth, advocating for your residents, and at the same time having a backbone. Being a politician is not easy. I do want to commend him also on now as amended, section L, KJKL, the development be constructed substantially in accordance with the zoning bylaw. I do want to commend Councillor Harvey on that. People at the end of the day, they want to see something be built of what they were promised or shown before. And major changes or having zoning that leaves leeway. I know there were concerns that this might, become commercial. So I really want to commend Councillor Harvey on that because at the end of the day, that's what people most care about, what it looks like. Councillor McCann says it's how you make people feel with development. It has to do what you see as well. So it's kind of on the same lines as that. So I do want to commend Councillor Harvey on that, and I think that specific amendment might be a good precedent for similar things moving forward. And again, I commend you on your work, Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Morales, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify one comment that he made, congratulating me and some of the work that I did was a three-way team effort. And I'll be quite honest with you, the last key point that he raised was through much discussion with Ms. Banfield, the Director of Planning. So I think a lot of kudos also goes to her and the very willing work that the applicant's planner was able to go through over the last week since we've began further discussions.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harvey. Any other comments on the motion as amended? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion as amended? I am as well. That is passed unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. The other matter that was held is 481 Young, and it was held by Councillor Jim Harris. Councillor Harris.
Good. Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And I think the spirit from that last discussion may be very timely, given what I would like to present. So I'd like to put the motion, the item on the floor as printed. And without going into too much discussion, obviously, lots of interest, as you all know, about this particular development, and in the spirit of collaboration, shared interest. And I'd like to put a motion on the floor to refer this item back to staff to have them review opportunities to reduce the density and relocation of the storm pond. So I'd like to put a referral motion on the floor. Is that?
Sorry, just in case you wanted to speak about the application, you should do that before you put the referral motion on, because if there's a referral motion on, it's not debatable.
So, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Yeah, that was, so I didn't want to overstate the point. That was okay. That was my intention, and I had spoken to the clerk, so I didn't want to take too much liberty with my intention to refer it back and then take the liberty to do too much commentary about that. But certainly the previous discussion about the value of discussion and collaboration on an item and moving forward, there's still opportunity I feel here. So I like the idea of referring it back to staff to consider further discussions about density and on this matter.
Yeah. Okay, so that is a referral motion to send this one back to staff. It is non-debatable. Any questions about process? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. Those in favor of the motion, please indicate. And opposed? 1. That carries. So that matter is referred back to staff. I believe That completes Planning Committee's agenda for this evening. Deputy Mayor Ward, any inquiries for this evening?
I have none.
Any inquiries for staff members of Planning Committee? Seeing none, any announcements? No, we don't do announcements at Planning Committee. We did a lot of them last night. So that completes our agenda. Thank you, everyone. That concludes Planning Committee.